The girl was born with the world's rarest golden blood, a precious type of blood so rare that she was like a living national treasure, and even a single drop was enough to make dying billionaires desperate to obtain it. The president of Thailand's top financial empire was suffering from terminal cancer, and his life had already entered the final countdown. Normal medical treatments were useless, and the only way to extend his life was to find someone with golden blood. To gain credit, his assistant immediately sent people to drain an entire golden blood donor's blood. But that small amount could only keep the president alive for 3 more days.
I'll find another.
Foreign blood isn't something you can just find.
Do as I say and keep all his organs. We may need them later.
To find a stable blood source, they hired the most ruthless human trafficker and hunter in Southeast Asia, searching the world for golden blood carriers. Eventually, they discovered a 6-year-old girl named Lhan living in a rural village in Vietnam. The hunter led his armed men to kidnap Lhan, and her parents were shot dead while trying to protect her. Lhan watched helplessly as her parents fell into a pool of blood. She wanted to fight back, but she was only a child, and her weak little hands could never defeat these armed monsters. To force Lhan to obey, the hunter even grabbed a gun heated until it was burning red and pressed it against her neck. From that moment on, a permanent scar was left on Lhan's neck, a mark she would never be able to erase. Just as Lhan was about to be taken away, a group of men happened to pass by and witnessed the brutal kidnapping and the couple lying dead on the ground. Without hesitation, they got out of the car and rushed forward, forcibly taking Lhan back from the hunter. But Lhan didn't know that these men weren't completely innocent either, because the leader of this group was also searching for her as a living blood supply. They brought Lhan back to Thailand. Meanwhile, the hunter hired by the wealthy businessman was immediately threatened after failing the mission. They had already taken the money but failed to bring the girl back. To them, Lhan was not only the target, but also their only chance to survive. No matter what the cost, they had to find the girl with golden blood. When Lhan was brought to Mansion No. 89 in Thailand, the little girl who had lost her family completely fell into fear and despair. She ran around the mansion like a terrified animal, screaming and struggling, because she didn't know whether these strangers who saved her from the hunter were actually good people or just another group of monsters who wanted to steal her blood. The people inside the mansion used a translator to communicate with her, repeatedly telling her that they would never hurt her. But Lhan didn't believe them. Just when everyone was about to lose control, a young boy appeared. He gently walked forward and calmed down the frightened Lhan. For some reason, the moment Lhan looked at this boy, the fear inside her heart instantly disappeared. It turned out that the boy was the son of the mansion's leader, named Pran. Seeing this, the leader asked Pran to take care of Lhan's daily needs and stay by her side.
ในวันนั้นฉันไม่รู้เลยจริงๆว่าทำไมฉันถึงถูกช่วยไว้ด้วยคนกลุ่มนี้ทำไมฉันต้องมาอยู่ที่นี่รู้แค่ว่าแววตาของคนคนนั้นมีบางอย่างที่ทำให้ฉันสงบและเชื่อใจ
From that day on, Lhan was adopted by Mansion No. 89. But she was strictly forbidden from ever stepping outside. The people inside told her that countless monsters outside wanted to capture her and drain her blood, and only this place could protect her. The young Lhan believed them, but she had no idea that the so-called safe haven, Mansion No. 89, was actually Thailand's top assassin organization that had existed for 3 generations, and the man beside her, Pran, who spoiled her and protected her from every danger, would guard her for the next 15 years. But nobody knew that this seemingly beautiful rescue was actually a carefully planned imprisonment from the very beginning. From start to finish, Lhan was nothing more than his backup living blood bank. After arriving at Mansion No. 89, Lhan never forgot the face of the person who destroyed her family. From the moment she was rescued, the seed of revenge had already been planted deep inside her young heart. Although she lost her parents and her home, Lhan was lucky that her childhood inside Mansion No. 89 was not completely filled with darkness, because Pran was always there for her, along with another close friend named Aim. The 3 of them grew up together and were almost inseparable. As the years passed, the little girl from Vietnam slowly grew into a beautiful young woman. Through years of living together, Pran and Lhan gradually developed feelings for each other, and Aim noticed everything. In fact, Aim also loved Lhan. but he knew her heart had always belonged to Pran, so he buried his feelings deep inside and silently stood behind them, becoming the person who protected them both. However, during those 15 years, the hunter hired by the financial empire never gave up searching for the golden blood carrier.
There's none here.
It's been a long time since we last found anyone with orange blood. You have to go back to Vietnam and find the one who know where they took her.
Vietnam? I don't think the ones who took her are hunters, okay? I don't even know who they are. I'm afraid that
You've already gotten 20 million. Even if they are God, you bring her back.
One day, Lhan suddenly became curious about why Aim had to go through intense training every day.
มันเป็นหน้าที่อะบ้านนี้ทุกคนต้องมีหน้าที่
แล้วเราอะมีหน้าที่อะไร
ไม่มีมั้ง
ทำไมอะแล้วปลามีหน้าที่อะไร
เราก็ไม่มีเหมือนกันดูแลรันไง
After living in the mansion for so many years, she still had no idea what these people actually did. Until one day, she witnessed Pran take action with her own eyes. Only then did she discover that Pran was not just an ordinary man. He was skilled in combat, and his ability was even stronger than Aim's. This discovery shocked Lhan, and from that moment on, she became deeply interested in fighting. She secretly watched Pran and Aim during their training. After returning to her room at night, she would lie on her bed, replaying their movements again and again, then quietly practice by herself. No one taught her, and no one knew she was training, but day after day, she relied only on her eyes and memory, copying their movements until she had memorized most of their fighting techniques. One day, everyone in the mansion had to leave for a mission, leaving only Lhan and Pran behind. That was when Pran suddenly suggested taking Lhan outside. For more than 10 years, Lhan had never stepped outside the gates of Mansion No. 89 and had never seen the outside world. Hearing Pran's invitation, she became extremely excited. Like a child, she immediately ran to choose her most beautiful clothes, wanting to wear them when she went out with Pran, but this scene was discovered by Aim.
นี่แต่งตัวทำไมวะ
ไปเที่ยวปานจะพาไปเที่ยวอย่าเพิ่งบอกปลานะจะใส่ชุดนี้อะ
ลุงเขาไม่ให้ออกไปไหนไม่ใช่เหรอ
ก็แอบออกไปไงคืนนี้ไม่มีคนอยู่บ้านไม่ใช่เหรอห้ามพูดเลยนะ
Looking at Lhan's hopeful expression, Aim eventually softened. He chose to help them keep it a secret. That night, Lhan and Pran secretly left Mansion No. 89. For the first time in her life, Lhan stood on a real street. For the first time, she tasted street food and felt the noise and excitement of the night market. But Lhan didn't know that this brief moment of freedom had awakened a deadly storm. Among the crowded streets, the hunter who had killed her parents recognized her instantly. The scar on Lhan's neck was the mark he had personally left 15 years earlier. After searching for her for 15 years, the hunter was overwhelmed with excitement. He immediately tracked Lhan and Pran's movements and followed the clues until he found the location of Mansion No. 89. He sold Lhan's location to the financial empire and then spent a huge amount of money hiring their rival, the Rarest Assassin Group. Their goal was simple: destroy Mansion No. 89 and capture Lhan.
มีปัญหาเหี้ยอะไรกับของบ้านนี้ไม่ทราบ
มันเอาของผมไปแม่งเสียเวลาชิบหาย
บ้าน89เป็นบ้านนักฆ่านะเว้ย
ไม่แน่ใจนะพวกคุณเคยคิดหรือเปล่า ถ้าไม่มีบ้าน89แล้วว่ารายได้พวกคุณจะดีขึ้นขนาดไหน
Meanwhile, Pran's father soon discovered that he had taken Lhan outside. He became furious and severely criticized his son.
ไม่รู้ดิเพราะไม่เคยคิดดูลูกตัวเอง
รันเขายังออกไปไหนไกลๆขนาดนั้นไม่ได้เขามีราคายังมีคนต้องการตัวเขาอยู่แน่ๆ
ทำไมพ่อถึงใช้คำว่าเขามีราคาแล้วใครจะมาเอาตัวรันไปคำว่ามีราคาคืออะไรพ่อมีอะไรก็พูด
เลือดของรันเขามีราคากว่ากูจะได้ตัวเขามากว่าจะหาเขาเจอไม่เหนื่อยชิบหายเลยมึงรู้ไหมถ้าเรื่องแค่นี้มึงยังไม่ยอมเข้าใจสักทีแล้วยังจะเสือกพากันออกไปล่อนข้างนอกแบบนี้กูจะจับมึงแยกซะให้จบๆไปเลยดีไหมหยุด
During that argument, Pran finally learned the truth. he discovered that his father had never adopted Lhan simply to protect her. The real reason Lhan had survived all these years was because she was their backup blood source. After hearing the truth, Pran completely broke down. He always believed he was protecting Lhan, but only now did he realize that Lhan had never truly been free. She had only been transferred from one cage into another, a cage that looked kinder and safer. After struggling with the truth, Pran made a decision. He didn't want Lhan to continue being used, and he didn't want her to face danger again. So he found Lhan and decided to take her away from this place. But before they could pack their things, the elite assassins from the Mara group had already arrived. They gave them no chance to negotiate. Using explosives, they destroyed the gates of Mansion No. 89, and a brutal massacre began. The assassins of Mansion No. 89 fought back with everything they had. Gunshots, explosions, and screams filled the entire area. And in the middle of the chaos, Lhan saw a familiar face, the hunter who had killed her parents. At that moment, 15 years of fear, hatred, and anger completely exploded inside her. Almost instinctively, she grabbed a gun and fired wildly at the man who had destroyed her childhood. But while protecting Lhan, Pran was stabbed in the chest by an enemy. Seeing his son injured, Pran's father rushed forward to save him, only to be shot himself. Fortunately, their allies arrived in time and managed to pull Pran and Lhan away from the battlefield, taking them to a temporary safe house. Lhan never expected that the moment they entered the safe house, the first thing everyone did was tie her to an operating table. She looked at them in terror, and when she saw the blood transfusion equipment beside her, she finally understood. They were going to take her blood and transfuse it into the dying Pran. Pran struggled desperately and refused to accept it. He didn't want to treat Lhan like a blood bag, but the situation gave him no choice. Watching everything happen, Lhan finally understood the truth completely.
รานเป็นออรัมบลัดแล้วก็เป็นโรคเลือดไหลไม่หยุดฉันเพิ่งรู้ตอนนั้นเองว่าฉันมาอยู่ที่นี่ในฐานะคลังเลือดของเขา
After the transfusion, Pran slowly recovered, but the enemy had already surrounded them. If they wanted to survive, they had no choice but to fight their way out. To protect them, Pran's father decided to go outside alone and draw all the enemy's attention. With his wounded body, he charged into the rain of bullets, buying precious time for everyone else. In the end, he was shot down, but before he died, he had prepared one final move. He activated the explosives that had been secretly planted throughout Mansion No. 89. With a deafening explosion, Pran's father sacrificed himself and took the enemy assassins down with him. Watching his father die in front of him, Pran completely collapsed. He wanted to rush back and save him, but his companions held him tightly and dragged him away. In the end, his father used his own life to create a path of survival for them. Meanwhile, the hunter discovered the blood transfusion equipment they had left behind. Only then did he realize that Lhan was not the only person with golden blood. The discovery drove him completely insane. He decided that even if he had to chase them to the ends of the earth, he would bring them back. Eventually, Lhan and the others hid in a remote seaside town. There, Lhan finally understood that this entire war had started because of her. If she hadn't possessed golden blood, maybe her parents would not have died. Mansion No. 89 would not have been destroyed, and Pran's father would not have sacrificed himself. The overwhelming guilt became unbearable. She wanted to leave alone so she would never drag anyone else into danger, but Aim stopped her.
พ่อเราตายแม่เราตายคนบ้านนี้ก็ต้องมาตายเพราะเราคิดหน่อยเถอะไม่โทษตัวเองได้ป่าววะลันขอร้องเถอะที่นี่มีแต่คนรักแกนะเว้ยรักเพราะเป็นเราหรือรักเพราะเลือดเราแต่แกก็ไม่เคยบอกให้เราด้วยไม่รู้ไอ้ลันตอนที่ลุงพาแกเข้ามาบ้านนะเขาแค่บอกว่าแกไม่มีใครเว้ยมันก็ปกติของบ้านนี้ปะเราก็ไม่มีใครเหมือนกันเว้ย
Pran hoped that his uncles could help Lhan find a truly safe place where she could escape from everything. However, the others understood better than anyone. The hunters would never stop. As long as Lhan was alive, there was no such thing as a completely safe place in this world. Pran found Lhan and apologized for hiding the truth from her. He apologized for the years she had spent trapped inside Mansion No. 89. After surviving this life and death escape, Lhan finally understood a cruel truth. Hiding behind others would never bring her freedom. If she wanted to end this life of being hunted, she couldn't remain prey forever. She had to become the hunter herself. So Lhan begged them to train her. She wanted to learn every skill of an assassin. She wanted to become strong enough to protect herself and strong enough to personally end all the hatred that had followed her for 15 years. At first, nobody believed she could do it. After all, Lhan was small and physically weak, and becoming powerful in such a short time seemed almost impossible. But the next moment, Lhan stepped forward and demonstrated the fighting techniques she had secretly learned. Her punches, dodges, blocks, and counterattacks were surprisingly impressive. Only then did everyone realize that this girl was not starting from nothing. She had incredible observation skills and an extraordinary ability to learn. Her only weakness was her physical strength.
คิดเร็วตอบโต้ดี แต่ขาดแรงขาแรงหมัดแกนกลางลำตัวด้วย
ความไว ความแม่นยำ ความยืดหยุ่นน้อย
วู่วามไปหน่อยฮะกะจะปะทะอย่างเดียว ไม่ประเมินตัวเอง สู้ทรงเนี้ยตายเร็วกว่าป้าข้างบ้านอีก
From that day on, Lhan officially began her hellish training. Every morning, she ran long distances. She learned close combat, knife throwing, firearm assembly, and precision shooting. From hand-to-hand combat and pain tolerance to assassination tactics and anti-tracking skills. She trained in a way that pushed herself beyond her limits. She trained until her hands cracked from shooting practice and her body was covered in bruises from fighting. But she never once said she wanted to stop. She turned 15 years of humiliation, fear, anger, and pain into the motivation that made her stronger. Meanwhile, Pran also knew that their situation was becoming more dangerous, and he had already started preparing for the worst. He found Aim and seriously asked him that if he died, Aim should take care of Lhan and protect her in his place.
มึงสั่งกูแบบเนี้ย มึงรู้ปะเนี่ยว่ากูชอบเขา
เห็นชัดตั้งแต่โน่นแล้ว
At the same time, the hunter finally found clues about their hiding place. They discovered that the car Lhan and the others had used before had appeared nearby for sale. The hunter immediately found the seller and threatened him into revealing Pran's location. That night, Pran came to Lhan and personally trained her.
เอาใหม่ เนี่ยสองเส้นที่สำคัญมาก โจมตีระยะไกลอาจจะยาก แต่ถ้าอยู่ใกล้ เอากรรไกรเจาะแล้วตัดนี่จบเลย อยู่ตรงนี้
During the training, the distance between them slowly disappeared, and the feelings they had hidden for so long finally broke free. Under the influence of their emotions, they finally confessed their feelings and became a couple. After spending the night together, they sat side by the sea and watched the sunrise. But this happiness was only the silence before the storm. Pran knew the hunters would find them sooner or later. Instead of hiding forever, they decided to strike first. The car that had been sold was actually a trap set by Pran. He had already told the seller to notify him immediately if anyone came asking about the vehicle. Sure enough, the hunter fell into the trap. They already knew the enemy had found their location, so they prepared an ambush in advance. When the hunter and his men arrived, Pran immediately detonated the vehicle. At the same time, the others attacked from high ground, launching a precise assault on the hunter's group. But the problem was that they were heavily outnumbered. The enemy came with overwhelming firepower, making this battle unfair from the beginning. During the fight, one of Pran's companions chose to sacrifice himself and took another enemy down with him. Meanwhile, Lhan finally faced the person who had murdered her parents. For years, she had only been running away, but this time, she didn't retreat, because the Lhan standing here was no longer the helpless little girl who could only watch her parents die. She finally had the chance to confront the source of her nightmare. At the same time, Pran was also trapped in a dangerous situation. At the critical moment, the doctor saved him, but the doctor was immediately killed by an enemy assassin. In the end, only two major enemies remained, the leader of the Mara group, Bru, and the hunter who had ruined Lhan's life. Pran faced Bru alone. This battle was not only about survival, it was also about avenging his father and clearing the final obstacle standing between him and Lhan. Meanwhile, Lhan continued fighting her enemy in a deadly battle. This time, She used everything she had learned during training. Every move carried 15 years of hatred. The hunter believed Lhan was still the same weak little girl from 15 years ago, but he soon realized he was wrong. Lhan had completely turned the tables, facing the monster who destroyed her childhood. She showed no mercy. She seized the opportunity and drove her blade into him. Every strike represented the revenge that had been delayed for 15 years. In the end, Lhan used her own strength to kill the hunter and finally completed the revenge she had waited for. The three of them successfully reunited and escaped the factory by car, but they never expected that Lhan had been shot. And even worse, Brew was still alive. Dragging his dying body, the crazed man fired at their escaping vehicle and chased after them like a demon. Lhan was losing more blood every second, and they had no time to reach a hospital. Because golden blood was so rare, the only person who could save Lhan was Pran. Pran made his final decision. He stopped the car, took out the transfusion equipment, and inserted the needle into his own vein. Pran knew exactly how dangerous golden blood transfusion was. When Lhan gave him blood before, she only provided a safe amount, which was why she survived. But now Lhan was at the edge of death. The amount of blood she needed had already exceeded what a human body could safely provide. If Pran continued, he would most likely die, but Pran still refused to stop. At the same time, Aim rushed out and fought Brew in their final battle. This was Aim's last chance to protect Lhan and Pran. Before this, Aim had told Pran that although he also loved Lhan, he hoped Pran would be the one to protect her, because he knew the hand Lhan truly wanted to hold had always belonged to Pran. In the end, Aim and Brew both died together. Meanwhile, Pran continued transferring his blood into Lhan's body. His face grew paler, and his breathing became weaker. He knew this was the last time he would stay beside Lhan, and the last time he could protect the girl he loved. Before losing consciousness, he said goodbye to Lhan.
ใช้ชีวิตแบบที่ตัวเองอยากใช้ให้ได้นะ เราจะอยู่กับLhanเอง
When Lhan opened her eyes again, Pran was already gone. The blood flowing through her body was the blood Pran had exchanged with his own life. He used his death to complete the redemption that had been delayed for 15 years. He protected the girl he loved and finally repaid the debt he carried in his heart. Years later, Lhan gave birth to Pran's son. She lived quietly with the child in a hidden village. Every day, she taught her son survival skills, because her son had also inherited their golden blood. As long as this secret existed, danger would never truly disappear. However, Lhan never expected that the hunter she had stabbed years ago had actually survived. After barely escaping death, he disappeared and lived in hiding, waiting for a chance to take revenge. Lhan never forgot about this enemy who escaped. She set a trap and lured him back to the small village where her parents had died. This time, she didn't hesitate. Using the deadly technique Pran had taught her, she finally ended the hatred that had lasted for more than 20 years. In the end, this movie was never just a story about assassins and romance. It was the story of a girl who was once treated as an object and eventually fought to take control of her own life. Mansion Now 89 claimed to protect her, but secretly treated her as a backup blood source. Everyone kept deciding her fate, trapping her in different cages under the excuse of protecting her. Only Pran truly returned the right to choose back to her. He protected her with his life, but he couldn't spend the rest of his life with her. He gave her hope to survive, but he never got to witness her happiness. This separation between life and death became the most heartbreaking part of their story, and it became the pain that Lhan would carry forever. See you in the next movie.